Welcome to the Line Life podcast. I'm Jeff Postlethwaite for T&D World, and today we're bringing you more stories of the grit, courage, and inspirational teamwork that it takes to be a line worker.
Thank you for tuning in to the T&D World Line Life podcast, produced by Endeavor Business Media, a division of Endeavor B2B. My name is Amy Fischbach, and I'm the field editor for T&D World and also the host of the Line Life podcast. Before I dive into today's episode, I invite you to become part of our Line Life podcast community by searching for the Line Life podcast in your favorite podcasting app or going to linelife.podbean.com and clicking follow in the top right. We air interview-style episodes on the first and third Fridays of each month, and also audio stories in our In Case You Missed It series featuring articles that appeared in our print magazine on the second and fourth Fridays of each month. If you have a comment on this episode or a suggestion for a future guest, please reach out to me. You can email me at amyfischbach@gmail.com or reach out to me on LinkedIn or on Instagram at Lineman World. I'd love to hear from you. Now let's move on to today's episode. Line workers work long hours in extreme conditions to keep the lights on and power flowing for their communities. Oftentimes, they experience near misses themselves or lose a loved one in the line trade. For that reason, I decided to launch a 3-part series on mental health in the line trade. I started this series with an audio story narrated from the article I wrote for the 2025 T&D World Lineworker Supplement. This article was called Prioritizing the Mental Health of First Responders. The second part of this series will feature an interview that I had with Jennifer Lavin of Union Care Solutions. The third and final part will include how-to sidebars from the article that I wrote for the Lineworker Supplement on how line workers can not only help themselves, but also their crew members who may be struggling with their own mental health. Before we listen in on the interview that I had with Jennifer, I'll share the one important phone number you need to know if you or someone you know is having suicidal thoughts, and that number is 988. When you dial that number, you'll be connected to a local mental health professional in your community, and you can have a free private conversation to get the help you need. Now let's move on to the conversation I had with Jennifer after she gave a presentation at the 2025 International Lineman's Rodeo Safety and Training Conference. Jennifer, thank you so much for joining us today for this episode of the Line Life podcast.
Thank you, Amy, for having me.
It's so great to have you here as a guest for the Line Life podcast. To begin, can you talk about the importance of mental health in the line trade?
Yeah, I think it's a really important topic. I think it's something that isn't really addressed.
Yes.
Right? And I understand why. It's a hard thing for everybody. And sometimes, when we don't have the skills ourselves, we don't really know how to help other people. And so it's something that I think does get overlooked because people are focusing on the work and on the job. But what we're kind of seeing, right, is that a lot of things that happen outside of work, they do affect, your job performance and having your head in the game. And, a lot of times you're with people, at work more than you are at home. Mm-hmm. And so it's something that is kind of coming to the surface that, let's talk about this. And the more we talk about it, the more it makes it okay to talk about it. And then it gives people kind of that permission and space to maybe look at themselves too and say, you know what, this is really hard for me, or I am having a hard time. And I do think it is affecting my job.
So what are some strategies that linemen can do to safeguard their mental health in the field?
I think first, just kind of being aware of what the risks are for themselves, especially apprentices. They're traveling. They're probably not eating the best food, right? They're, gas station,
yeah, I've heard
hot
gas
dog.
station diet.
Yeah. And just kind of checking in with yourself and knowing that, this work is hard. And just because you're used to it and capable, that doesn't mean it doesn't kind of add up and take its toll. And so I think being mindful of where they're at, also just, checking in with themselves, like how is their crew doing? How are their relationships, going? And what are the things that they might be going through? And also paying attention to the resources that they have. I'm a huge advocate for EAP usage. It's something that's very underutilized. It's something like under 10% of people utilize their EAP at like the utilities in the construction world. And so knowing that there are those resources that are out there to talk to somebody, I think is really important.
Absolutely. And talk about this culture and why it's so hard for a lineman to ask for help.
Well, it is a male-dominated culture, right? And I think a lot of men go to work and they're very capable and they're expected to do the job, right? And they're good at their job. But those skills, those kind of hard skills at work, being capable and building things, they don't really translate to some of these mental health struggles. And so a lot of men will isolate, or they feel like they have to do it on their own, or they feel like they'll be ridiculed or made fun of if they do share something, right? So if that crew doesn't have that connected culture, you know what I mean? And so there's kind of that hazing. And so people you might make fun of people, and there might be kind of that on the job thing in the way they build relationships. And there's a part of that is okay and expected. But sometimes people really are struggling,
Absolutely.
and they really are having a hard time, or if they're going through a divorce, or that somebody in their family is sick, or they're taking care of aging parents, or, their wife is pregnant. Like, these are real life things that everybody goes through, right? And so sort of kind of understanding, like, acknowledging, like, yeah, man, that sucks, right?
Yes.
Like, that is a hard thing, and just letting people know that you care and maybe checking in on them and kind of, paying attention to that, because it affects your work, right? Like, there's absenteeism where you don't show up for work, but there is something called presenteeism where you show up for work, but you're not really there. It's like, what does that look like on the job if your head isn't in the game, or you're up in a bucket, or you're just whatever you're doing, you're driving, right? Like this large equipment, And so, being distracted can really affect your job and the safety around. So it's important. We talk about like my brother's keeper, like this is your crew. This is, your work family. You want to make sure everybody's checked in and supported and dialed in. And, I think it makes for a better work environment too.
And Jennifer, what are some of the dangers of not being locked in or having your head in the game?
Well, I mean, I think there's like little, mistakes that get made, right? Errors, if you could miss like a safety step, you know what I mean? Or just not paying attention to your surroundings, right? There's all of those like, kind of on the job hazards by not having your head in the game. But also burnout. I think burnout is probably one of the biggest things where you're grinding. I mean, it happens to everybody, right? And
sure.
you don't know. It's like, you don't know until it happens, right? You're not done till you're done. And then you're just kind of like, you're kind of left with, okay, how do I pick up the pieces? Whereas how do we do it where we can like get it before that, right? Like where we can help people before they get to that point.
And Jennifer, can you talk about your family history of line work and how that inspired you to start Union Care Solutions?
Yeah, so my father-in-law was a lineman and business manager of Local 47. My husband's the business manager currently of Local 47, and his grandfather was a lineman before him. So my kids are actually fourth generation
Are they
IBW.
really?
Yeah,
Fantastic.
and so they're we started them they're doing underground right now, and I think kind of earning their stripes and getting their, feet wet in the trade, and they love it, and they're on some great crews. And so it's kind of neat, and that's why, being a wife, once they graduated and, we were kind of empty nesting, although
Right.
that never ends,
Yeah, sure.
but I was like, how can I help? Right. I love the community. I love
Sure.
IBW Local 47. I love IBW, so it's like, how do I help people? We just saw kind of a gap in care, and my sons are in the military, and once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Right.
And it's so confirming when I have conversations and people come up and, they share their stories, and it kind of keeps you going, so that's why I do it. I love the industry. Even being here, you see all the families and
so
the
cool.
kids, and you see people, it's like their grandkids are coming and watching, grandpa compete. And it's just such a wonderful community that it feels like it's like none other, right? Because you're a part of it. But I do think there is a uniqueness to it, which kind of speaks to the brotherhood and sisterhood of the community. So I think given the right resources and tools, we can really do a lot of good.
So Jennifer, now can you share the trauma support and crisis intervention services that you provide?
Yeah, so what we help start out at Local 47 are these crisis response teams, and we go through an organization called ICYSF, and they kind of provide the training, and it's something very common in police and fire. And so when there's a fatality or an incident, we're able to deploy a crisis response team, and they can go in and check on the crew right away and just check to see how everybody's doing, because they're, once something happens, the crew's really great about responding, and everybody's doing what they do, and they're checking on the wife, like they're going to the hospital, like it's a whole thing, but who's checking on them, and we just want to make sure that they're getting the support that they need, and that we can catch something, if someone's having a hard time, that we can catch it early. And so we do that. And then after that, there is something called a debriefing that happens, and it's an ordered process. It's like 7 phases, and they go and it gives the guys an opportunity to check in and kind of debrief from what happened and sort of fill in the gaps of the day. And it also gets them, the goal is to connect them to the resources and just check on them. A lot of times, they're expected to go back to work right away, or there might be a safety stand down, and it's like a day.
It's not enough.
No. And these are things, from doing this work and having people train, there are incidences we were debriefing 15 years later, that stuff, it just sticks with you, and our community is so good about supporting like the families and checking on them, and, they pass the hat, and it's like, there's just this gap of care, and they're expected to kind of just go back and perform. And they're not robots, These are, men and women that have families, that have, kids and responsibilities at home. And a lot of times they don't feel comfortable talking to their spouse. And it's mostly because they don't want to bring that home. Right. They don't want to bring that burden into the home. And so they don't have anybody really to talk to, or it might be mentioned, but there's no real like, hey, this is okay. This is what we're doing. This is the plan. And I think the more we do that, they understand. And, it's going to be a good day when we get people that are like, hey, this happened. I need a debrief, because that's when we know it's kind of sticking and people are finding and advocating for themselves. We really need the crews like frontline to start advocating, like, we want this, we need this, support, and we want to be educated on how to support each other.
So what are some signs that you think that journeyman linemen and apprentices should look out for when they see someone who is struggling and know that it's time to get them help?
I think, kind of back to that presenteeism, if someone's head just isn't in the game, if they seem kind of off, or you're doing something and they're, daydreaming, if you know somebody that's coming in and you can just tell they had a long night. Maybe they're not sleeping, or they're coming in hungover, or that they're drinking more than maybe they used to. And, you can tell, right? Yeah. Like these guys are pretty close. They kind of know each other. So they know, and they talk to each other. And also, sometimes people will tell you, like they'll say, hey, man, I'm not doing okay, and I think a lot of us don't know what to do with that, especially if it's something that's kind of always happening and it's like always that guy. And so we can kind of feel like, oh, you get kind of desensitized, right? But, checking in and just knowing like, hey, like you're saying these things, I want to help you. Like, sure, where are you at with this? Right. And there's really no right or wrong way, just to check in, and everybody has a different relationship and a way to do it, And so just asking that question and being willing to be curious about what's going on in their life, and and kind of see, okay, well, how can we troubleshoot this together, and like knowing that, they're not alone.
Yeah, no, that's good. And at the Safety and Training Conference, you passed out coins with 988 on them. Can you talk about what will happen if a line worker dials that number?
Yeah, so 988 is a great resource. I've called it myself, and, it took like 45 seconds for them to get on the line. And so, and I've heard people that will do like a 3-way call if they don't feel comfortable, doing that. And I think that's a really good option for people. But you call, you get connected to a crisis center. It's based on your area code. So it's something that's local to you, and they will ask you how you're doing. And it's for anybody. It's if you are in a place where you're thinking about suicide, or you're with somebody that has expressed, a desire for that, you can call. But it is also for things like if you're just having a rough time and you don't know where to go and you want someone to talk to, and it's confidential, they'll kind of give you a roadmap and connect you to local resources to get you some support. And so it's just a really great first line of defense. I think the hardest part of it is really just to call. So I encourage people just on a day where you have 5 minutes, call, ask the questions. Hey, I'm okay, but what do I do if I have a friend or a family member that is not?
Cool.
Just to kind of get that first, like uncomfortable. Because the first time I called, it was uncomfortable.
Sure.
And I was like, I'm okay, but I'm just trying to figure this out. So it was like kind of this awkward conversation.
Yeah, sure.
But she gave me all the resources, very knowledgeable, and even kind of told me some of the things like people are worried because you can give your name, but you don't have to, right? Because they want to ask for your number in case you get disconnected or something like that. And so she just kind of walked me through what that call would look like.
Oh,
and it was really easy. And it took me 5 minutes. And so now, I feel comfortable calling, and I would feel comfortable calling, in a group or with another person just to kind of see what it is. And I think the awareness, just knowing that it's out there, is huge, that you have an option. You're not alone.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And if it gets dark, you can call this number. It's 988. It's super easy. I tell people, put it in your phone.
Yes, that is such a good idea. So Jennifer, how can they learn more about Union Care Solutions?
I have a website. It's www.unioncaresolutions.org. So you can check it out, and you can email me if you need any support. And I just want to thank you for that article that you wrote.
Sure,
it was amazing. You covered so much information.
Thank you so much.
I was like, you covered a lot of the bases, and I hope people walk away with knowing that there are options, and it can fit in any contractor, utility, and for them personally. So you did an amazing job, and it was an honor to be mentioned.
Jennifer, thank you for taking out time to talk to me for the Line Life podcast and for all that you do to safeguard the mental health of the line trade. And if you want to listen to part 1, it's now available at linelife.podbean.com, and look for part 3 on resources to help with your own mental health or those of your crew members. Thank you, and stay safe out there. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Line Life podcast, produced by Endeavor Business Media, a division of Endeavor B2B. Be sure to subscribe or follow the Line Life podcast in your favorite podcasting app so new episodes will be delivered straight to you. For more insights, you can visit our website at tdworld.com/podcasts or linelife.podbean.com. You can also connect with us by following us on Instagram at Lineman World or on Facebook, LinkedIn, or X. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Line Life podcast.